to another mediocre episode of Legally Judgy.
Oh, okay.
I'm Alexa.
That is not the energy we need to be bringing into our episode.
I was just trying to be funny.
Okay.
Throw you off because
Well,
I thought you would be ready for like a really ridiculous.
Yeah, I didn't know what
Adjective?
I was expecting, but not mediocre.
I kind of just flew with it.
Okay.
What I want to say is supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
I didn't even say that right, so glad you didn't try that one. I'm Nicole. I think I introduced myself.
I'm the other one.
Yep.
We have some announcements. Bulletin board. You've never heard this before. Maybe you haven't if this is your first episode. Otherwise, you definitely have. We are going to shamelessly plug our Patreon because that's where you will get all of the extras. We have uncut episodes. We have our community hub, behind the scenes footage, personalized polls. You get to talk to us and some mini-sodes, which are just more of us talking about ridiculous legal issues.
Hilarity.
Highly, highly recommend it.
So many good ones.
And we have a new patron. We have to shout out.
Yeah, shout out Erica I. Thanks for joining the Judgy team.
Erica I, bless you, child.
Come judge with us.
You wonderful little goose. Thank you for joining.
For some reason, I really want to sing If You Want to Go and Take a Ride With Me by Nelly. I don't know why. That's
weird.
Feels very strong
You
about something about Erica's name. I was like, come on, come ride with us.
You and Erica I with some Band-Aids on the cheeks.
Yeah.
Just cruising.
I need to have a little slash in my eyebrow.
Let's do it.
Wife beater.
My bartender.
Wow, okay.
Looks like I want a bartender.
Somebody's in a certain place right now.
My barber. And it's like the one time I actually don't have tequila with me.
Yeah.
My barber could hook you up on the eyebrow slit.
On the eye slash? Cool.
I told you he was trying to push it on me.
Yeah.
I don't think I could pull it off.
I'm really glad you didn't do that.
I think you could. We should talk about
I
that.
don't know what that says about me, but all right.
You could be a fuckboy if you want.
Okay.
I'll dress you in my clothes for a day. Let's see what happens.
All right. I mean, the pants would be a little short, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it'd be like high waters on me.
You'd be the worst fuckboy. Actually, that could be the style if we put some like white Vans on you.
I was going to say some guys actually like a good like tight short pant.
It'll be worse. You really will look like a fuckboy. This isn't even... Look, everybody, if you're enjoying this banter, you get more of this in the uncut episode. So go sign up. Join Erica I and my dear friend Nicole with the Band-Aids and Nelly in the Jeep and the fuckboy attitude. Otherwise, we're about to get into our patron-only content. All right, should we...
Let's dive in.
wrap up the Patreon-only segment? Thank you all for listening. If you weren't, go listen now because we talked about a lot of shenanigans.
Always shenanigans.
Fitness and partying, I would say. You guys guess who was who. Hint, I never do fitness. So anyways, this episode is actually a pretty sad one.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's interesting because we've never covered anything like this. So today we are going to be talking about Naya Rivera, who was I think most people think of her as one of the stars from Glee, if not
For sure.
the breakout star, Santana Lopez, who I loved.
She's a hottie.
I loved her.
She was really pretty.
I guess I thought she was hot too, but I just loved her attitude. I was like, her character was so cool to me, especially obviously being younger at the time and just having like LGBTQ representation. I just remember that is so cool that they made her into a lesbian, but she was hot.
I didn't watch the show, so I didn't
I
really know
wouldn't
about
see
the
that for you.
storylines or anything, but I just knew that she was pretty.
She was like the mean girl cheerleader who bullied a lot of people, and then it turned out she was closeted, and that became like a more meaningful story arc. So you come to like her after.
Yeah.
At first you're like, God, what a bitch.
Well, we always know that when people are mean, there's something happening behind the scenes.
Yes, and it was true for her. So unfortunately, Naya passed away in an accidental drowning, and her ex-husband and brought a lawsuit on behalf of her son and the estate, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
What's going on, and how does this work?
Let's do it.
So, do you want to open us up, per usual?
Let's talk about Naya.
Tell us about Naya.
So Naya Marie Rivera was born in 1987 in Valencia, California, which is just a little bit north of Los Angeles. Her mom was a real estate agent and former model, while her dad worked in IT. And fun fact, while she was part Puerto Rican and other parts black and white, she didn't speak Spanish growing up, but she understood it and later learned to speak it.
Relatable. Okay. Although I still haven't learned to speak it.
Well, we can start.
I still
we can
have
do
time.
Duolingo.
Yeah. Oh, girl, you're right.
I really like Duolingo.
I was just looking at that green little bird today, because it taunts me.
It gets very harassing sometimes.
Oh my God, I'm like,
Sometimes
leave
fuck
me
off. It's
alone.
been 3 months, I'm not
I
practicing
need a
today.
restraining order against that stupid green bird.
Well, Naya learned to speak it. Sorry for you.
Yeah, good job.
So Naya ends up being represented by her mother's talent rep from her mom's modeling days. And so basically as soon as Naya's out of the womb, she is like fully has a team.
Yeah.
She was actually literally only 8 or 9 months old. So like
Can't even talk.
didn't even hit her first birthday.
Can you hold your neck up at that point?
Yes, you can hold your neck up at 8 or 9 months. You should be sitting by then in theory.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, we advanced quickly.
Okay. So Naya starts acting at a young age and actively auditioned through her childhood and adolescence. And she was in various commercials for Kmart as a baby, but her first major role was when she was 4 on the show The Royal Family, which was on CBS. And since she couldn't read yet, since she was 4.
They don't learn to read by 4 then.
Some kids do.
But the neck is working.
It's all right. She was working on other things. But I mean, she was busy. She was booked and busy.
All right.
So because she couldn't read, she had to have her lines read out loud to her, and then she would memorize them. And so people say that this was really a part of like her skill and the reason that they really enjoyed having her on set and acting. And so she learned pretty quickly and like rarely messed up on set, all things considered, which is quite impressive for
Really
a kid who can't read.
My nephews and nieces around that age, there's no way. They're so hyper. They wouldn't even sit down long enough for me to read them a story, actually.
Yeah,
let
when
alone
I was
memorize.
teaching preschool, it was a real mixed bucket.
Oh yeah, this was like your age group, right?
Yeah. It was
fair
real
enough.
mixed. A lot of them would not have been memorizing lines. And so though the show got good reviews, it was actually canceled after the lead star, Red Fox, had a heart attack on set and died in front of Naya.
Which is
good. Really sad at 4.
That's
pretty traumatic.
That's way too much. Yeah.
So after this, she goes on to get a handful of different roles, which helps to create her space in the market, including on The Fresh Prince, Family Matters, Smart Guy, Baywatch, which I have had questions about since I learned, because I'm like, what were you doing on Baywatch? But
we'll find that.
You know what? Okay. And then she was also on The Bernie Mac Show and many more. And so generally she credits some of her success with being mixed race, so she could play a lot of different ethnicities. But she also said that at times it was also a challenge when people didn't think that she was Black or Latina enough for certain roles.
Never white enough, huh?
No, here she's just
one drop rule.
Oh, wow. Okay, dark. So it used to be true.
I'm saying.
So in a 2016 interview, Naya also mentioned how racist the casting process could be, citing an example about a time where she was told that she lost the part to a white woman because, in quotes, the size of her lips was distracting to male execs. And so after this exec said that to her, she basically said, like, does he know that's racist? Like, I'm Hispanic and Black, so you can't say that.
Yeah. Sad you have to point that out, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was back in the day. I mean, things like that still happen now, so can't say I'm surprised.
That's why I said that drop rule.
But so, as acting often goes, sometimes the roles weren't really consistent, and she basically had to find work to sustain herself and sometimes even her family in between the gigs that she was getting. So she also worked as a telemarketer, a nanny, and a greeter at Abercrombie.
Weren't you one?
I was at Hollister. Thank you.
Excuse me.
Loved Hollister.
Sorry.
Fun fact, she even auditioned for American Idol in San Francisco, but was cut in the first round.
Aw.
Yeah.
Well, at least she tried.
Yeah.
So everything turns around for her in 2019, though, when she's cast as, the girl that I said, the mean girl cheerleader, Santana Lopez in Glee. Shout out to Santana Lopez. She said that she auditioned because it gave her the opportunity to sing, dance, and act all in the same show, since all of these things were of interest to her. And we got a couple fun facts for y'all. Brace yourselves. So to prepare for the audition and eventually the role, she says that she drew on her own experiences of being unpopular in high school and watched movies like Mean Girls to prepare for, the bitchy bad girl cheerleader that would be Santana Lopez. This role was actually sweet vindication for her too, because she actually wanted to be a cheerleader when she was in high school, but her family couldn't afford it. So I feel like
quite expensive.
Is it?
It was an expensive sport. Because you have like
the
all
uniform?
the uniforms usually
What
the
do you
school
do?
gives it to you, but you have all the like competitions and things.
You have to pay to participate in the competitions?
Yeah, you pay like a team fee.
Oh, geez.
It's like they break it down per student, but then it's like the travel that goes with it and the hotels. And I will say, like, when you compete, usually like those costumes aren't covered versus like the school uniforms that are covered, or like you have all of your matching practice outfits that you have to buy. You have cheer camp multiple times a summer.
Oh, cheer camp.
It was very expensive.
That's sad. They should have subsidies for families that can't afford it.
Yeah.
Scholarships or something.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that offline. That's
America.
not fair. Yeah. America. Capitalism. Another fun fact, she also dropped out of her own high school choir after just a few months, allegedly because she was, in quotes, overlooked for classmate Nazanin Mandy, singer, actress, and married to Miguel.
Yep.
So
they just got back together, actually.
Small world. They're on again. I know. I just said married because, you know, they're just on again.
No,
off
but they're
again.
back. They're back. They never got divorced.
Oh, that's true. They separated, right?
They were like, we're going to get a divorce, and they got back together.
I'm going to stay at a hotel for a few years, and then we'll see how it goes.
Was it years?
No, it wasn't.
I think it was like a couple months, right?
No, yeah, it wasn't that bad.
Sorry, go ahead with your fun facts.
Last fun fact. I'm really having a lot of fun right now, if anybody wanted to know. She kept working as a nanny during the first episodes of Glee because she wasn't sure that the creator, Ryan Murphy, would bring her back full time. But as you all probably know, they did bring her back. She wasn't actually made a series regular until the second season after people fell in love with her character. And this is the season that also really cements her place on the show and how people view her as an actress, really, because I feel like this happens a lot where an actor or an actress plays, you know, a queer character, and then they become like kind of synonymous with that character, and you see them like attending all the LGBTQ rallies and parades and all that, right? That just happens. And for me, I know that was true. Now I was like, Naya, Santana, same thing. And during this season, her character is shown struggling to come to terms with her sexuality and her inability to come out, which she doesn't actually do herself until the third season. Fun fact, reportedly, Santana's sexuality wasn't even going to be a big story arc or focus of the show, but Naya pushed for the character's sexuality and relationship to be taken seriously. So kudos to you, Naya.
Yeah.
Resting in power. So because of this role and this season, she received a lot of critical acclaim, awards, and praise for the way she portrayed, you know, her struggle. And she also went on to tackle and highlight other important themes to her in the series itself, like celebrating more of her Spanish culture. I think she was able to sing a song in Spanish too. So her learning Spanish later in life was helpful not only for this show, but she even talked about teaching it to her son. So
cute.
Very cool.
Well, so while she continued to work on Glee, in 2011, she ended up signing a deal with Columbia Records to produce a solo album. And so she releases a single in 2013 called Sorry with Big Sean, who she dates for some time and was engaged to. And the song ends up reaching top 40 on one of the Billboard music charts and was even in the top 10 of the iTunes download chart for some time. I literally have never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
I meant to look it up and forgot.
I looked it up.
It just didn't stick.
I'd play it for you now, but then we would have to pay streaming rights.
Was it good? Okay. Well, we don't have to, you know.
Not my cup of tea. Okay, I listened to like 10 seconds and I was like, now.
But she was singing, right? Not like rapping?
She was singing. She was singing. Maybe I need to give it another chance.
Well, okay. So a lot of people haven't heard of it. Seemingly, she didn't really take advantage of this momentum, though, and didn't really do a lot else with her music career, which, you know, understandable. She was also acting full-time. There were rumors around that time that Columbia had dropped her at various points, but her team basically said that that was not true and that she was still, you know, under the label, but not doing things. But in any event, there were not any other projects that came out of this deal. And so she continues to focus on her acting career and stars in a number of things, including some films like At the Devil's Door and Mad Families, TV shows like Devious Maids and Step Up, and she also had a recurring guest spot on The View, which is like so cool.
It's like a
That's
dream
like
job.
my eyes light up.
One of your,
you know what I mean? One of many. Anything that involves me like being cute and talking.
Fair enough.
Rumor was that she was actually, you know, in talks, or they were looking at her to possibly get her like a more permanent spot on The View because people liked her personality and her opinions, and kind of, I think she brought a younger voice to the table because, as we know, The View is
a little older.
It's mature.
A little, yeah.
It's a mature group.
Wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even know that she had guested that often on it. I don't
probably watch The View.
It's a little
First
too
of all, we're at work.
mature for me. Yeah. I'm more of a Vanderpump Rules kind of gal.
Okay,
Jersey Shore.
I'm sure you're getting equally helpful advice and stories from there.
Hello, yeah.
But so in addition to her successful acting career, Naya was also really involved in philanthropy and advocacy, especially for the LGBTQ plus like rights and, you know, affiliated groups. And then in her personal life, in October 2013, she gets engaged to the rapper Big Sean, again, but they end up splitting up in 2014. Some not so fun facts. In her memoir, she claims that she found out they were over at the same time as the rest of the world after Big Sean announced the news on social media.
Oof.
Very awkward.
That's rough, huh?
Who's the person who like sends the post and is like, "Hey, girl." So I know you're still wearing your ring. You just thought I might pass this along.
He actually wants it back. If you could just,
if you could just put that in an envelope,
slip it under the door. Thanks, THX.
And so allegedly, after they broke up, she asked him not to rap about her. So of course, he rapped about her in his lead song, "I Don't Fuck With You."
That was done.
Couldn't be any more gentle.
Yeah. That's exactly why I put this in here, right? Because of the salacious goss. I just want you to know that.
Listen, okay.
Because neither of us like Big Sean, I assume.
Literally hate him.
Yeah.
And so she ends up performing to this song on the TV show Lip Sync Battle, which was seen as like, you know, some shade to him. So good for her for like kind of taking the upper hand.
I didn't watch it. I should have watched the performance, presumably.
What's that thing that they always say, turn your tragedy into your triumph?
I thought you were going to say trunk. And I was like, what does that mean?
Oh, there was like that phrase where it's like turn bad things into good things. So I guess like she took this song, a bad song, and was like, I'm gonna get paid to do a cameo and sing your stupid little fucking song.
And you know how many people must have been entertained by that.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to go watch it after this in tribute.
Well, YouTube.
Look, she ends up moving on, though, and she marries actor Ryan Dorsey in July 2014, who she had an on-again, off-again relationship with for like a period of time.
Sorry, I just cut you off. I just got really curious about, because I also meant to look that up.
He has like such a familiar face, but then I'm like, where are you from?
Has he had any major roles?
He was in Ray Donovan, which I didn't watch.
Oh, I didn't watch that either.
Justified,
don't know that. All right.
Anything else, Producer Marge? I see you Googling stuff too. I never saw that.
All right.
Justified?
Okay. Well, you know.
I don't know.
It's fine. He's an actor. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's an actor. And the couple had their first child together, a little boy named Josey, in September 2015. But sadly, they end up getting divorced, which was finalized in June 2018 after a seemingly turbulent separation. In November 2017, so the fall before they finalized their divorce, Naya was actually arrested for domestic battery against Ryan after she allegedly hit him in the head during an altercation over Josey. Ryan later did request that the charges against her be dismissed, and they were. Mm-hmm. So they presumably worked it out because they were able to agree to joint custody, and they both waived child support payments. Ryan even later agreed to give Naya primary custody. So it seems, again, like they were able to work it out. And I know even, which we'll talk about, like post-death, he obviously paid tribute to her, and they had a good relationship, it seems.
Yeah, for sure. So sadly, everything takes a turn in the summer of 2020. And so on July 8th, 2020, Naya took her son Josey, who was just 4 years old at the time, out to Lake Piru. Like Peru. We're very undecided on this.
Here, I'll look up
it's a man-made
pronunciation
lake.
while you keep talking.
It'll be too late by then. But it's a man-made lake in Ventura County, which is in California, which basically allows people to like swim, boat, barbecue, hang out, all of those like good park activities. So Naya grew up going to the lake since it was near her childhood home, and so she said that she'd often swim and boat there with her family, and in interviews, she'd even refer to the lake as her sanctuary. And we mention this because she was familiar with the lake and was considered a strong swimmer and an experienced boater, which kind of ties into the story later, so stay with us. Mm-hmm. But so her mother later stated that Naya was originally planning to have a barbecue with Josey that day, but when they arrived, she decided to take him out on the lake instead using one of the lake's rental boats. And so her and Josey head out from the dock around 1 p.m. and were expected back at around 4 p.m. because the boats were like on a 3-hour rental system. And so when they didn't return, the staff basically started to search for them. And so around 5 p.m., somebody at the lake spotted Josey asleep in the boat with his life jacket on, but didn't see anybody else in sight with him. So Naya was like not seen. Mm-hmm. And it's important to note here that they found them on the north side of the lake, which is referred to as the Narrows, which is like known to be very deep and windy. Mm-hmm. And so the person that finds them ends up calling the police, and the police come and interview Josey and basically like get the following details from him. So Josey told them that he and Naya were swimming for a little bit, but that she quickly told him to get back into the boat, and that she was possibly able to help him get in, but she couldn't climb back into the boat herself and disappeared underwater. And it's worth noting here that Ryan, her ex-husband's lawsuit, which we'll get into in a little bit, maintained that Naya didn't help Josey get back in the boat and that he got back in got himself back in without any aid. Mm-hmm. And so sadly, Josey also said that he watched her struggle to try and get back in and call out for help, and that he even searched for a rope in the boat to get help and get her back up, but that there wasn't one. And lastly, Josey also stated that she wasn't wearing a life jacket, which we'll come back to a little bit later.
Mm-hmm. After this, a search began for the remaining hours of the day, since, of course, they found Josey at 5 p.m., only limited daylight hours left. And by the end of the day, Naya was declared missing. Having no luck the next day either, she was presumed dead, and the rescue efforts switched to recovery efforts, which meant 40 divers instead of 100. The sheriff's department explained that the visibility was so poor in the lake, largely due to thick vegetation, that it was more probable Naya would be found by using sonar devices, which they did use, in addition to sniffer dogs when they hoped Naya had walked out of the lake. Sadly, the divers end up finding her body on July 13th, floating in a 30-foot deep area of water, and they believe that her body was probably trapped under that thick vegetation for several days until, of course, it floated to the top. The Ventura County Sheriff suggested that Naya and Josey were likely caught in a rip current, which allegedly was somewhat common in the area of the lake that they were in, especially during the afternoon, and they struggled to get back to the boat, which was found unanchored and so may have drifted from where they entered the water. He concluded that Naya likely, in quotes, mustered enough energy to save her son, but not enough to save herself, end quote, noting how Josey described being pushed back onto the boat by his mother, which again, Ryan, her ex-husband and father of Josey, refuted in his lawsuit. And again, this will be relevant because of one of the claims he's bringing, and we'll talk about that. And a weird, very grim fact, she actually passed away on the 7-year anniversary of Corey Monteith's death, which he was another actor on Glee. Mm-hmm. So
they were also really good friends, too.
Yeah, they were. Very, very eerie. July 14th, the next day, the coroner releases reports confirming that the cause of death was an accidental drowning and that there was no evidence of injury or intoxication. Though in September, the entire toxicology report was actually made public, which showed she had small amounts of prescription medication for anxiety, she had caffeine, and a negligible amount of alcohol in her blood. We mention this again because Ryan's lawsuit will later state that the release of this full toxicology report to the public was, in quotes, an attempt to discredit Naya in the media and distract from their own negligence, end quote. So after this, the lake was closed for over a month, and of course, swimming became prohibited, but people were still allowed to boat and shore fish. A petition actually started circulating and got 50,000 signatures asking for warning signs to be put around the lake.
Mm-hmm. So in November 2020, Ryan Dorsey, her ex-husband and the father of Josey, files a lawsuit on behalf of their son Josey and on behalf of Naya's estate. And so in this lawsuit, they're suing Ventura County, where the lake was, the county's Parks and Recreation Management, and the United Water Conservation District, which basically oversees the lake, for wrongful death and negligent infliction of emotional distress. And so the suit says that her death was preventable and that there were no signs to warn of the dangers of the lake and of swimming in the lake, and that the boat that they rented did not have proper features and equipment to comply with the U.S. Coast Guard's safety standards. Specifically, they say that the boat was, in quotes, not equipped with a safety accessible ladder, an adequate rope, an anchor, a radio, or any security mechanisms to prevent swimmers from being separated from their boats. And it also wasn't equipped with any flotation or life-saving devices.
I have to take a pause here.
Okay.
So I grew up going to lakes, actually.
Okay.
I don't know. It's maybe a popular thing that we do in SoCal. And we actually had a boat growing up. Are you a boater? Are you
I actually have a boating license, thank you.
Do you really have a boating license?
In Michigan, you have to get one when you're in middle school.
You're just driving boats around in middle school?
I guess because we're surrounded by the Great Lakes. I never really thought about it, but when I was 13, I got my boating license.
So you had
I don't know if it's still up to date.
a license to boat before you had a license to drive a car.
1,000%.
Good for you, girl. Mm-hmm. So then we both know how this goes. Because for anybody listening, the things that I was thinking of was every time we went out to swim, we would anchor our boat, and then we would have a rope that had buoys along the entire rope. Mm-hmm. And then we would wear life jackets. As I got older, sometimes I'd be stubborn and be like, no, I don't need a life jacket, because it was seen like as a baby thing. Yeah. I'm like, I'm a strong swimmer. I love swimming, right? But I will tell you time and time again, the rope with the flotation devices on it was very helpful, especially there's other boats going, the waves and the wind, right? You can easily get caught up in that.
Yeah.
And so it was so important to have that rope, because sometimes you also get very tired. So even if you're a strong swimmer, if the current's really bad, you can gas out very quickly. And so what would happen sometimes is there'd be moments where we would all be tired, or a couple of us, right? Because I have my siblings and my parents. We would hold on to the rope, and then maybe my dad, let's say, would go back to the boat and pull the rope in, or we would take that rope and kind of use our arms, our hands, right, to essentially rope ourselves in, like grab the rope into the boat as opposed to swim into the boat. Those kinds of safety features, I'm just thinking, if this boat didn't have that kind of thing, would be so important, because if you go and jump in to swim and it's not anchored and there's crazy riptides and there's currents, the boat could easily be feet and feet and feet away from you.
It's also surprising, just given how, from what I gathered, and it doesn't sound like you into this lake either, but it sounds like it was actually really quite heavily trafficked by people who not only lived in the area, but also like by tourists, I guess, or visitors, I should say. And so to have had so many people coming through, you would think that they would just like be thinking about the safety equipment that needs to be there for like the sake of kids even. Or, I mean, obviously adults need it too. So it's pretty shocking.
No, it really is. If it's hard not to think that this was the case if it's in the complaint.
Well, so relatedly, in the filing, they also included documents citing the lake's deadly history and said that there weren't any signs at or around the lake warning of the strong currents, low visibility, high winds, changing water depths, underwater caves, ledges and drop-offs, and the debris that basically like congests the water. And reportedly, there have been more than 24 people that have drowned in the lake since 1959.
That's a lot. Which drownings happen, but to your point, there's got to be signs for this type of thing. And especially what gets me is parts of the lake, especially if they knew that the Narrows, the north side of the lake, was particularly deep and the winds really hit that area of the lake. They should say no swimming in the afternoon. No swimming. Oh, it upsets me. Sorry, go on.
Well, so they said that on the day of her death, the wind was actually up to 21 miles per hour that afternoon. So the boat was likely carried away by the wind and made it hard for Naya to climb aboard after Josey had gotten himself back on the boat. And even more, when she was renting the boat, a life vest was presented as optional. So she declined one, but the staff still put it on the boat, and it was essentially found when the investigation took place. But they didn't warn her of the conditions on the lake generally or that day. And just the fact that they even like made it optional seems a little ridiculous.
It really is. I'm glad they put it in. But this reminded me, another thing too is, when you're like in the lake and you're trying to hoist yourself onto the boat, that can actually be very, very hard. If there's no ladder, you better have massive upper body strength to be able to lift your, because it's not just like a regular pull-up. Also the water, and if you're wading and you're going back and forth.
And with people in the boat, like it's weighted.
Yes, it's so hard to get yourself up out of it, even with a life jacket. I remember so many times having a life jacket, which obviously keeps you up at the top, and still having difficulty. I don't know actually if I've ever been able to do it without a ladder. I've always had a ladder. So if this boat had no ladder and she presumably was already exhausted from even trying to just swim to the boat, you are on fumes most likely by the time you get yourself to the boat. Okay, sorry, very upset over here.
It's okay. Do you want to tell us what the claims?
Okay.
Are you too upset to tell us?
No, I'll talk. I'm just so, it just seems so preventable.
It's negligent.
It is so freaking negligent.
It's so mad. Reckless, frankly.
I get upset every time I think about this, actually. Anyway, so okay, we're going to break down the wrongful death and emotional distress claims, but we want you all to keep in mind that both are really based on negligence principles, as my good friend, co-host, and bestie for life had just said. Remember, people, we've talked about negligence a lot, but the thing you have to keep in mind when we go over this stuff is, did someone fail to act with reasonable care? And this is something that is very fact specific and would be determined by a jury at trial. You're going to weigh every single fact and figure out who is culpable. So wrongful death is a civil claim, meaning it's not criminal. It can be brought by just regular folks like us, not the government, in a criminal case. That's brought when someone is killed because of another person's conduct. And in California, surviving family members or the estate of a person can sue for damages when someone dies as the result of someone else's wrongful acts. And this can be negligent acts, grossly negligent acts, reckless acts, or of course, intentional acts. Negligence is the failure to act with reasonable care. There's a lot of other elements to it, but honestly, that's the easiest way to explain it. So, did someone die as a result of someone else's failure to act with reasonable care? Sorry, I'm going to stop myself from getting into the facts. Gross negligence, it's literally the same as negligence, but worse. That is the best way to explain it. It's worse than negligence, and it's just short of recklessness. Think essentially very negligent. Like just a little too much. It's so funny, these legal terms. It's
so nuanced.
Yeah. There's really no logic. There's really no easy way to explain it. No. It's just whatever you feel. Reckless involves the deliberate disregard of a high probability that an injury to another will occur. So essentially, like, this was so reckless. This was obvious. You really didn't care here. And then intentional, on purpose. So negligence or recklessness here, or gross negligence, I wouldn't say this was intentional, would be the lack of safety features and equipment, and the lack of proper care in warning people and providing safety equipment, right? Especially, like we said, the area of the lake that they were in was known to have riptides. Like the sheriff said, the area they were in, likely they had a riptide, during specific hours.
I mean, not to even mention the fact that the winds were 21 miles per hour that day.
Yeah.
Like, you know how, like here, for instance, when you're at the beach, right? When it's along Southern California, they will say if it's too windy and if the conditions are dangerous, or like, you know, they'll shut it down, or they'll just warn you. But like, there should be similar things, especially for 21 mile per hour winds.
Exactly. And that, like you talked about, don't make the life vest optional. Require, you know, I think it's a California law that if you're 13 or under, you have to wear the life vest. But I think it's obviously, you know, I'm sure the same people who were resisting seatbelts in cars way back when are the same people who are saying we should have the option not to wear life vests. But if you're this lake, especially if you've had 24 drownings, maybe you say, sorry, you have to wear the life vest or else. And then get sued if some people have issues with it. But at least you did your best. And have the rope on board, have all the things that he pointed out that the boat did not have, the ladder, the buoys, everything. So we're saying they messed up. So Ryan is saying, you guys were negligent. You didn't put up signs. You didn't warn anybody. You didn't have the proper safety equipment on board. Okay.
So the other claim here is negligent infliction of emotional distress, which we, as most of you know, talked about in the Chris Brown episode. And so there are generally two types of emotional distress: intentional and negligent infliction of emotional distress. And so intentional occurs when the defendant's outrageous conduct causes the victim to suffer emotional distress, and the defendant's actions were intentional or made with reckless disregard for the effect that it would have on the victim. On the other hand, there's the negligent version, and so that occurs, again, when the defendant's negligent actions cause emotional distress to the victim. And as Alexa just kind of mentioned, you know, negligence is a failure to exercise the same level of care as a reasonable person would in similar circumstances. So again, same as the wrongful death claim. It's like the lack of proper equipment, the lack of safety features, the lack of proper precautions and warning. And so emotional distress claims can really depend on the jurisdiction. And so most emotional distress claims require you to have suffered physical harm as a result of the incident. But in California, where this case was filed, you don't need to show any physical harm. So under California law, emotional distress claims can be brought by bystanders who witnessed an injury to a close relative. And so a close relative in this instance is a spouse, a domestic partner, a relative who lives in the same household, parents, siblings, children, and grandparents. And note, California courts have not allowed recovery for couples living together who are not married or have a domestic partnership, which is a conversation for another day. But let's stay focused for now. And so witnessed in this context means that the relative must have been in what's called the zone of danger when the injury occurred and they were aware that the victim was being injured. So here, right, it's obviously clear that Josey meets the close relative requirement. That's her son. And he was obviously present at the time of the injury, so he witnessed it. But they'll have to prove if the county and parks department negligently managed to keep the lake in the boats. And additionally, remember here that Ryan is bringing this claim on behalf of Naya's estate as well. So he argued her estate was entitled to emotional distress damages, saying that Rivera may not have known that her son had made it to the boat, but she surely knew that she was dying and would not make it back to her son. And this is important because remember, Ryan is claiming the police report's account that Naya helped Josey into the boat isn't true, and that her emotional distress came from not knowing whether he made it into the boat safely himself. And so Ryan also claimed that the publication of the toxicology reports being released to the public was an attempt to discredit Naya and absolve the defendants, or the county, the Parks and Rec Department, etc., of negligence, which caused that emotional distress.
And the damages here, they asked for funeral costs and damages for Josey, citing that he had, in quotes, suffered substantial economic and non-economic damages as a result of Naya's death, including financial support that Naya would have contributed to him had she lived, end quote. And, you know, we're going to get into the defense, but we should tell you guys we couldn't actually find their filings, you know, their response filings, but we do know that the key to their defense is proving how they weren't negligent, i.e. careless, and how Naya's actions or inactions would have actually led to her death. So the first part, proving that they weren't negligent, they'd have to show what safety precautions were in place, like offering the life vest, pointing to whatever safety precautions or warning signs they did have in place, and possibly to bring in experts to show how those precautions were reasonable and standard, right? So maybe if I were them, I would go to the lake, and if there are any signs warning people about, I don't know, the winds or swimming, and maybe there are protocols that there were in place about, maybe they did have I don't think so, but maybe they did require people to wear life vests.
I was going to say, like, signs saying that, you know, we recommend you wear your life vest because of XYZ reason.
And then they're going to point to the boat. You know, what was on the boat that, I don't know, what safety equipment was there? It doesn't sound like there was, but if there was any, like the life vest, I guess. I don't know what else. Typically, I was going to say, too, the seats on a boat should be flotation devices in and of themselves, but it depends on the boat. So I don't know. I'm really trying here because I just have no sympathy for them.
Yeah. The
second part, though, proving how Naya's actions or inactions led to her own death, is based on a comparative negligence principle. And we talked about this actually in the Trevor Noah MedMel lawsuit episode. The underlying legal principle here is something called comparative fault, which is meant to determine how at fault each party is and whether they can recover damages as a result. So, for example, in some states, you can actually only recover for damages if you are less than 50% at fault for an accident, while in other states, you cannot recover if you are even 1% at fault for incurring the damages.
Strict.
That's pretty rough. And defendants are going to use this to reduce their liability, to point to how the plaintiff may have been responsible for part of their injuries. In other words, if I'm the county, I'm going to say, look, all right, maybe I was negligent in some ways, but also Naya was negligent in others. And so I'm going to reduce me being liable for 100% of the damages, maybe to 75, 50, whatever it is. So here, California, where this lawsuit was brought, California is a pure comparative fault state, meaning victims can still recover damages even if they are 99% at fault for the accident. So they can recover for 1% of the damages if that's where the trial nets out. And here the defendants are going to point to anything they can to basically mitigate or lessen their liability, like we talked about. So they're going to emphasize how Naya declined to wear a life vest and how the boat rental company put it in her boat anyway. Look, she said no, but we put it in anyway. They're going to bring up the toxicology report and try to argue probably that, you know, the drugs and the alcohol that were found in her system may have impacted Naya. Of course, they're negligible, and I don't think that that's a very strong argument, but
possible.
They gotta bring it up. And they will likely even point to the riptide and maybe try to argue that that was out of their control, right? That's nature. I can't help the riptide. Though, if I'm Ryan's lawyer, I'm going to say more reason that you should have had your signs up and even prohibited swimming altogether.
And had all the safety features in the boat.
Yep. And that area of the lake. I only say that because the sheriff was quick to say that there were riptides there. So I don't know if he did that intentionally to try to, you know, if he anticipated there might be a lawsuit ahead, or if it could have been, you know, harmless.
Debatable. Wonder if he was thinking that far into the future.
Yeah, who knows? And it could be true, right? If that fact can go either way, and that's something that happens in court. The same facts can be used by both parties,
sides,
and it'll cut against both depending on how the jury wants to come out. So again, even if this reduces some of their liability, it likely won't reduce all of it. And I don't know. I assume you agree. I'm getting a head nod from you. So
yeah, I think so. I mean, it just seems so obvious here. Like, it seems so negligent to, like, restate the term 5 million times, and I think possibly even rises to the level of reckless, just given the number of deaths that there had been in, like, 50 years? Like, that's not, I mean, it's a long time in the grand scheme. Maybe it's kind of a long time when you think about the course of your life, but it's not that long when you think about 24 people dying.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're having, like, this recurring issue and you're not doing anything about it, just generally, but also, like, you know, in modern times, it's just not unexpected that, like, you're supposed to have warning signs up for so many different activities.
Yeah.
Like, everywhere you go, there's a warning sign now. So it just seems so ridiculous to me that, like, I don't think that a lot of these things are going to be great. If they kind of submit some of the evidence that you just mentioned, I don't think it's going to be overly beneficial to them.
I agree. The other thing I was thinking about, because this happened on the lakes that I went to growing up, is like they have patrol out in the waters, just like you would like police out in the streets driving around, right? You would have patrol boats making sure that everybody's okay. I feel like that's even more important when the lake allows swimming because you want to make sure people are okay, like lifeguards, you know, or just whatever safety patrol you have.
Also, aren't you only supposed to, like in most lakes, don't they have like what are these things, like cordoned off areas where you swim?
That's a good point. Yeah, like a buoyed area where it's like swimming is okay here.
Because they know it's like only like so deep and there's like not vegetation that you could get caught in.
Yeah, if there is definitely like the area that they keep talking about with the thick vegetation or these caves and all that, I would definitely think you would rope them off with buoys, right?
For sure.
You'd have buoys, right, that rope areas of the lake off. I agree. Some of the lakes I went to growing up, for what it's worth, it was mixed. There were some where they were partitioned off and it was just swimming only in that area. But then there were others where you can boat around because it's pretty common, I guess, in the summer, right? You want to be able to boat around, jump in because it's hot. But then you keep the flags, right? It's bright. The rope that I was talking about with the buoys on it usually have like bright yellow or red or orange like flags to alert people that you're swimming, and your life vest presumably should be bright too, because more what I remember thinking is being fearful of other boats not seeing me and then running me over. So I didn't want to get too far, so I always held on to the rope whenever or I swam the length of the rope and then I would swim back maybe. But again, those are the things that they could have done. A
million things. So either way, it's just like it's clear that a lot of things are missing here. And so I think because so many things were absent, they're gonna have probably a hard time. They would have had a hard time reducing their liability.
I would say if I were them, I would settle.
Settle? What's that? No, I'm kidding. Okay, so they settled the lawsuit in February of 2022. So just last month. It's still March. Although it feels like November. I don't even know.
December, end of year. Yeah.
And so, okay, for those who are wondering what a settlement is an agreement to resolve a dispute or conflict, thereby ending the need for a court hearing. And so courts will often review the settlement afterwards to make sure that it's fair, but the court isn't intimately involved in the process between the two parties. And so people will often settle to try and avoid substantial costs where it comes to time and money. That's a big part of litigation. And courts will certainly encourage parties to settle claims like this to save their own time, especially given the claims and the harm here. And so we're not sure what the financial amount is. It hasn't been disclosed, which is often the case in these settlements, and we've talked about these many times before. But their family lawyer does say, in quotes, "Through this settlement, Josey will receive just compensation for having to endure the drowning of his beloved mother at Lake Peru. Though the tragic loss of Josey's mother can never truly be overcome, we are pleased that the monetary settlement will significantly assist Josey with his life beyond this tragedy." And note, the settlement actually still needs to be approved by the Ventura Superior Court. And that was supposed to be happening around now, but we have yet to be able to find any reporting on whether they did approve it or whether there were any comments to it. But we will keep you guys posted if we hear anything. And now, Ryan is raising Josey with the help of Naya's parents and her sister, Nikayla. So it seems like this was, as good an outcome as you could have had for a tragedy like this. At least he's got, the family around the son, and they settled. So, hopefully that will be able to take some, that will free up some attention and some time and some stress having to worry about financials and getting justice for her.
Completely agree. All right. What is the unsolicited advice here?
I mean, I think in this case, you just have to say just be careful. When you're going to do these activities, be careful. But also, if you're in a position where you're working for these offices or these parks and rec departments or, really anything where there's dangerous activities, people really need to be aware of putting up proper warnings and having proper precautions.
Hard agree. Wear a life vest, I would say. Even if you don't think it looks cool, just wear it. You never know. Literally,
there's this tourist lake in London that's not even that deep, and they make you wear life jackets. And so it's so crazy to me a proper lake doesn't, but a park pond does.
Yeah. It's so sad. I think I see a lot of myself in this story. Obviously, I'm Latin. I grew up on lakes. I feel very comfortable in water. I feel like I'm a great swimmer. There have been a couple times where I was like, oh shit, I'm glad I had my life jacket. Yeah. So I just my heart goes out to her because she probably didn't think she needed one, right? And it's so fucking sad. Yeah. She was so young. And so my advice is going to be to any government official who runs something like this, put up fucking signs, make them wear their life vests, patrol, make sure you're just doing everything you can to ensure everyone's safety to the best of your ability. Yeah. These wrongful death claims should never have to happen.
They're so avoidable.
It's so ridiculous. Yeah. All right. Time for the Q&A portion.
Let's do it.
We were asked, how do you like to spend your free time?
What free time? I've really been trying to get back into reading these days.
Okay.
I feel like as you know, it used to be, I'm a recovering reality TV addict. And so I am like that person. I used to be that person, I should say, because I'm better now, who like any free moment of the day, I would put on like the newest Real Housewives. And like I would cook my breakfast with Real Housewives on and like watch it at lunch while I like ate my salad, whatever the case is. So now I've been trying to read more. I enjoy a good hike.
Okay. That's good stuff.
Really like going out to restaurants. I love eating.
Yeah.
I really like food.
Yeah. Especially new places, right? New food.
Yeah.
I love new restaurants.
I like getting dressed up and going new places generally.
Yeah. Will you repeat restaurants?
Yeah, for sure.
Pretty often?
I mean, I try to like, mix it up, but sometimes my husband is like a creature of nature.
Oh, does he like have habit? He likes to like do the same thing?
Oh, yeah. He likes to go places and be like, I know exactly what's good here.
Oh, I would have not guessed that. I guess that hasn't been brought up. I would have thought he would like the new adventures. I could see a mix.
Yeah, well,
no,
we've tried some new adventures a couple times and
not good.
Didn't go well.
Going back to the same ones.
Yep.
Got it. My free time. Let's see. I do watch reality. I love reality.
You do.
I love to judge. So of course reality shows make sense for me. I also like to play video games, which is a new thing I've brought back in the last probably 6 months or so. Like there was a period of time a couple years ago where I was really on it and then I forgot about it. And now I'm back on it, and it really helps me zone out.
Sounds like a drug. Now I'm back on it.
I know. Well, we talked about this. Like, I think we have to fight the urge to be productive at all moments of the day.
Yeah.
And so I actually have always loved video games, but then, and I freaking fought hard to get my PS5, right? And then I got it. I played it for a bit, and then I was like, oh, you're not being productive. You have other things to do.
Yeah.
This isn't productive. This isn't furthering any of your goals. Why are you doing this? And then I literally would tell myself, no, you don't get to play video games.
That's so sad.
You need to go be productive. I know. So sad. So my wife, like, I think it was over the holidays, she called me out and she was like, hey, why did you go through the trouble of fighting to get the PS5?
Yeah,
and like,
that was like a month-long saga too. It was very intense.
I know. I like cried over it.
It was really intense. I feel like every time I would like text you, like I'm waiting in line online for a PS5.
I would stay up till 4 while we were working, stay up till 3 a.m., wake up at 7 just for this stupid PS5.
It's fucking ridiculous.
For me to only play it
I
for
have
like a couple
literally
days.
never felt that strong about anything.
Really?
Nothing. There was nothing that I would get 3 hours of sleep before a work day for.
I guess like a meet and greet with Beyonce, maybe? Auntie Opes? Would that come close?
Maybe. I don't know. At this phase in my life, that's a real tough sell.
That's the best thing I could come up with.
I would maybe pay somebody else to do it.
That makes sense. That's on brand for you. Especially you're not a night owl. Like, I would imagine that'd be real tough.
By 10:30, I'm out of there.
If someone was like, wake up by 5 a.m. to get
I could do that.
You could do that. See, and if that was me, I'd be like, no fucking way. That's just not happening for me. Okay, we have to now segue into our exclusive Patreon content. So if you want to hear what goes on behind the Wizard of Oz's drapes, go sign up for our Patreon. All right, then. That concludes our patron-only section.
Time for us to get a snacky snack.
Get to know ya. So, people, before we go, don't forget, tell everyone you know about us, okay? We are doing some cool things here, all right? Who doesn't love spending an hour-ish of your time with your besties, Nicole and Alexa? I know I love spending time with me.
Best hour ever.
Also, don't forget to go to Apple Podcasts if you haven't. Leave us a 5-star rating. Drop us a very nice review. We will be forever grateful. Anyways, our friends, thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Legally Judgy. We hope you enjoyed listening to us talk as much as we love the sound of our own voices.
If you did, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Also, join us on our Patreon for more judgy shits and giggles. Until next time.
Bye.